everybody? Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us. It is News Flash. Great to be with you on this Friday evening. So on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Senate Republicans. They are making headway. They're coming out and they have announced they will filibuster the January 6th inquiry bill, blocking an investigation, a bipartisan commission that would have been put in place by the Democrats if they got in their way here. Also, of course, we keep our eye on Israel with the electronic intifada. Israel is in a mass arrest campaign of people who participated in the protest in all three locations: Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, definitely Gaza. And we will give you the latest on the brutality of that. Meanwhile, a crazy story: they may just tax the wealthy in Connecticut. And a charming kind of blog from Discourse I want to share with you about the famous TikTok party, or the infamous TikTok party of, I believe, last weekend, called Adrian's Kickback. I'll tell you about that. If you're an older person listening to this, chances are you have no idea what I'm talking about. I'll explain it to you so you could bring it up to your kids and sound cool. All right, let's get right into it. But first, we've got to start with the real news first, and that is, of course, the January 6th commission. And that has been, of course, blocked, crazy, by the GOP. And I love how, like, their first big response to this is just, fund the Capitol Police way more. Which I think is like the only real acceptable political response, or any kind of response, is people who committed any crimes, like such as breaking and entering the Capitol, they should be punished appropriately in the grand scheme of the law. And in terms of any kind of extra governmental response, how about fire everyone in the chain of command in the frickin' Capitol Police, or at least investigate, which is really what they're trying to do here. Investigate, hopefully, we'll get into that, why, and we did talk about this a little bit with Zane Reimer, so you kind of know my positions about it, but you got to investigate, why in the world there were, two police outside the Capitol when everybody knew that these people, Trump would be holding a big rally. It was it was plannable ahead of time. Backup was not called under any circumstance. We don't know why that is. And that is the main reason why these people got into Capitol. They literally were escorted in. We pretty, in all but name only. We saw the guards having to remove the barricades and people just storming in. People just getting literally less than zero resistance from any sort of Capitol Police. That is why this happened, not because there's a growing, threatening domestic terror movement in this country. It's always been there. It's kind of been, obviously, I'm sure it's fair. I think it's definitely fair to say that it's been emboldened by Trump, but the idea that white supremacist terrorism has not been the biggest threat of terrorism in the, post 9/11 period for sure is, it's just not backed up by facts. But the question is, what do we do about that? And that is going to be the real point of contention, the point of debate for the future. So let's just take you up to date with what happened today. Republicans on Friday, they blocked the creation of an independent commission to investigate the January 6th Capitol riot, using their filibuster power in the Senate for the first time this year to doom a full accounting of the deadliest attack on Congress in centuries. The vote was a stark display of political self-interest by Republicans determined to shield themselves from an inquiry that could have publicly tarnished their party. They feared that an investigation that would remind voters of the consequences of Donald J. Trump's election lies and how Republican lawmakers indulged them, spurring their supporters to violence. And really what I think is, because there is really only three types of people in politics: so hardcore Democrats, hardcore lefties. Those are two of obviously very different things in my mind. You have people who are politically active on the left, people who are politically active on the right, and people who have checked out. And it's very, very hard to get those people to check back in again. So I'm not so sure all this minutia really here is mattering. But in Republican state houses, even in places like Wisconsin, all across the country, Robin Vos, the Speaker of the Assembly there, is hiring some private investigator or something to get into election fraud in his state. It is never ending, and it is a huge. It's definitely gonna be a huge problem. It's definitely gonna be like there is no. You are crazy if you don't think this is not going to come back again in the future in every major election that Republicans think they can contest. And really, the pretty much what the end result is here is another huge gift to keep Republicans in power for a long time. Because if you think about what's happening here is Donald Trump is out of the way. Everyone kind of likes that. But what they do have is another huge basis. It's obviously built on a false pretext, but what they can get from Stop This Deal is, okay, now we need to pass all these laws that undeniably make it harder to vote, and really continue to push in that direction, and then continue to, cater to the base, play to the base, and continue to win. And because we actually, they actually care about winning. What a shock. So it all but guaranteed there would be no comprehensive nonpartisan inquiry into the attacks root causes, the former president's conduct as his supporters threatened lawmakers and the vice president, or any connections between his allies in Congress and the rioters. So, of course, that's the kind of thing where, I think it's worth investigating the idea that people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene were giving tours to people the days before the riot, and then they were let in and did the riot. So, on Friday, only 6 Republicans joined Democrats to support advancing the measure to create the independent commission. The final vote, 54-35, fell short of the 60 senators needed to move past a Republican filibuster. The vote was a stinging defeat for proponents of the commission. They had argued that the only way to assemble a truly complete account for the riot for a polarized nation was through an inquiry that was modeled after the one into September 11th, 2001 attacks, in which outside experts with subpoena power undertook a thorough study. Again, that thorough study was pretty much taken by the government to mean, oh yeah, now we get to start 2 wars and kill a bunch of people and spy on Americans. So that is exactly, that's not the area we want to go in. We want to kind of stay away, I think, from anything in the style of 9/11. And I think really what is the scary thing is what, because there's going to be no force in power that will stand up to anything that this commission says unless there's a Republican. That's a funny thing, unless there's a Republican in charge. So, you could very, very easily envision a scenario if this commission does get done, and, down the road, maybe, I don't know, it wouldn't take 4 years, but the idea is, now there's a new Republican president, or Republicans in power, at least in Congress, and they come out with all these recommendations about, domestic terrorism, and one of them includes, expanding spying powers, but that gets voted down because it's coming from the January 6th Commission, and the January 6th Commission is libtards, all that stuff. That kind of level of thinking stops us from getting, horrific new expansions of the national security state, where that the Democrats would have otherwise granted. Not saying this is a possibility that's guaranteed or even likely for that matter. It's very, very possible Republicans just we need these spying powers, just kind of pass them under the table. But I mean, if the political power around denying January 6th is still that strong, if this investigation does happen and it does release results, I mean, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, at least for the Republican base, then they can get away with it. So it's going to be very interesting to watch and see what happens there. Some Republicans expressed disgust with their own party for blocking it, saying they had put politics over the finding of what promised to be a grim set of facts, says Lisa Murkowski. She was one of the people who voted for the commission, saying, quote, "I don't want to know, but I need to know." Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, one of the 6 Republicans who voted to form the commission, said to be making a decision for the short-term political gain at the expense of understanding and acknowledging what was in front of us in January 6th. I think we need to look at that critically. So, in terms of good things and bad things, I think that's a bad thing. Thanks, Lisa. While the Justice Department has opened hundreds of criminal cases against rioters, and congressional committees are likely to expand nascent inquiries, they will almost certainly confront limits that a commission staff with national security experts, just that idea that should make any smart American shiver in their boots a little bit. jointly appointed by Republicans and Democrats would not. Among them are partisanship, defiant witnesses, and turf wars that are likely to leave unanswered key questions about how the party rallied around Trump's stolen election lies and his demands that Republicans validate Joseph Biden's victory. And I do think it's a lot like, I think a lot of the same psychology is going on in kind of the minds of liberals that, the Robert Mueller situation would have. Is like there's going to be some sort of guy coming in and he's going to fix all our problems. He's going to tell us in a stern but friendly voice why this happened and how we can fix it. And then all the problems will be solved because he's smart and he's a national security expert. Or even better if it's a, girl boss. But anyway, Senator Chuck Schumer, he got all in everyone's face on the floor about this, saying, do my Republicans colleagues remember that day? Do my Republican colleagues remember the savage mob calling for the execution of Mike Pence, the makeshift gallows outside the Capitol? Shame on the Republican Party for trying to sweep the horrors of that day under the rug because they're afraid of Donald Trump. So top Republicans had actually entertained supporting the measure as recently as last week, but they ultimately reversed course and the House approved it with only 35 Republican votes. Leaders concluded that an open-ended scrutiny of the attack would hand the Democrats powerful political ammunition for the 2022 midterm elections and enrage a former president they're intent on appeasing. So no January 6th commission as of now. But if if this is the thing that Biden, that finally gets Manchin to agree to end the filibuster, and Biden's able to push it through, that would be funny. But who knows? All right, we can move on now to Israel, and this is from the Electronic Intifada, a very scary story about this arrest campaign. So, as Palestinians are mourning the dead, healing wounds, and surveying the devastation following Israel's 11-day massacre in Gaza, their counterparts in Israel and the occupied West Bank are reeling from an ongoing spree of killings and arrests by Israeli forces. This includes the apparent extrajudicial execution of a child in Jerusalem and the death of another child who was shot in the head by an Israeli soldier while shopping for the Eid al-Fitr, while shopping for Eid al-Fitr in the West Bank city of Hebron. Almost 30 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank since the 10th of May, and thousands more have been injured. So this is not in Gaza. This is in the West Bank. So this is the kind of territory that was supposed, for those of you who don't remember, so it kind of supposed to be Palestinian. It's kind of next to Israel, but has been increasingly moved in and pretty much controlled by Israel and especially their settler organizations. Dubbed Law and Order by the police, and the campaign is intended to intimidate and exact revenge, according to the legal advocacy group Adalah, which called it a militarized war. By last Monday, more than 1,500 people have been arrested in connections with confrontations between Palestinian and Jewish residents in cities in Israel over recent weeks. And of course, at least 70% of those detained were Palestinian citizens of Israel, according to the New York Times. And then we saw these riots, these literally uncontrolled riots that we talked about a few weeks ago on the show when this was going on. For example, the time where they pulled a Palestinian man out of his car and beat him almost to death. They did, a certain thing that, has happened before, shall we say, and which is taking rocks and stones and going for Palestinian businesses and trying to smash them. That was some of the things that were happening. People were beaten, and it was either some cases tacit, in some cases explicit police or government encouragement. So this is one of the more disturbing incidents here. Israeli occupation forces killed a Palestinian teen last Monday in what may have been an extrajudicial execution, according to the Defense for Children International Palestine. Zudi Munad al-Tawil was accused of stabbing a soldier and a settler at a Jerusalem light rail stop near Israel police headquarters in occupied East Jerusalem. The Jerusalem light rail, an illegal settler railway linking Israel's colonies on occupied Palestinian land, is seen by many Palestinians as a symbol of Israeli oppression. You think Palestinians getting anywhere near that light rail? No, they are not. Israeli police released a video showing Al-Tawil in an altercation near a train. So this is Defense for Children account describing this. He is depicted in the video running towards Route 60 when an Israeli police officer appears behind him prior to Zudi collapsing. Another individual appears in front of him as he enters the median. Without sound, it is unclear whether Zudi was shot from the front or the back. Separate video footage from a bystander shows Israeli forces firing at least 3 shots into Zudi Manad Zudi El-Tawil, who is incapacitated and on the ground, which may amount to an extrajudicial killing. So here, let's see if we can play this video. Looks like what's happening, it's very hard to see. Oh my god. Okay, so very hard to see who they're shooting at. But anyway, Al-Tawil then runs towards Route 60, where he is shot and chased by Israeli forces. So this is, again, on the at DCI Palestine account, if you want to go look that up. If you don't believe me. The video does not clearly show whether he was shot from the front or from behind. Another video filmed by a bystander shows Israeli forces firing at least 3 shots into Al-Tawil after he was incapacitated and lying on the ground. The videos circulated by local media shows Al-Tawil unconscious, handcuffed, freaking handcuffed, and lying on the ground. And one thing I didn't see in the video anyone holding was a knife. That is for certain. And you can see people, like I couldn't exactly see the shooting. All I saw was a big gun and some loud pops. And that was about it. Handcuffed, to add insult to injury. The idea that, he was like, they have the power, the almost 1984-esque George Orwell power to make up the fact that, he was wielding a knife at someone. And no one will punish them because this is all condoned from the top down and all the way through society. So the teenager, Al-Tawil, was from Kfur Akab, a neighborhood of East Jerusalem, of course, similar to Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan. Settlers crawling through that place right now, trying to evict Palestinians. Israeli forces routinely unlawfully kill Palestinian children with impunity, using international lethal force against Palestinian children when not justified. Intentional lethal force against Palestinian children when not justified by the situation, said Ayed Abu Ektash, DCIP's accountability program director. The DCIP added that international law requires intentional lethal force be used only when absolutely unavoidable or where there is a threat to life or emergency. If an individual allegedly carries out a criminal act, the group should be apprehended. They should be apprehended in accordance with international law and afford due process of law. Israeli forces routinely resort to lethal policy against Palestinians, even when they're fleeing or pose no immediate danger, a shoot-to-kill policy endorsed by, again, Israel's top officials. All part of the mowing the grass policy. So, the DCI reported that another child, Mohammed Khalil Yunis Frejat, died days after he was shot in the head on the 12th of May by an Israeli soldier in Hebron. The 14-year-old had been out shopping for new clothes with a friend. So this is, again, 2 teenagers that they shot. Absolutely unbelievable. Here is in the city's Bab al-Zawiya neighborhood in El Fatir in Hebron. This is Eid El Fatir. This is what he was shopping for. This is, of course, the holiday that marks the end of Ramadan. Confrontations had broken out between Israel and occupation forces and Palestinian youths. Mohammed Khalil and the other child were at least 300 meters, it's about 1,000 feet, away from the clashes when an Israeli soldier shot him in the left eye with live ammunition. Like, was it a misfire? Was it an intentional shot? We don't know. But he died as doctors at the Al-Ahil hospital were unable to remove the bullet in the boy's brain. He was pronounced dead 4 days later. Very, very sad story there. Last Monday, a Palestinian man was killed by an Israeli border police unit in Al-Bureh, a town near Ramallah. Ahmad Jamil Fad was from the Al-Amari refugee camp near Ramallah. This is, again, a Palestinian who has been removed from his home, not refugee from some foreign place, but literally in the same, just miles away, like literally car drivable, in some cases even walking distance. So his slaying also carries the hallmarks of possible extrajudicial execution. Here in this killing here by the Israeli border police unit. The circumstances of the shooting were not immediately clear at the Times of Israel reported, and a Border Patrol spokesperson declined a request for comment. The outlet reported, citing an unnamed Israeli security official, that Fahd was allegedly an accomplice to terrorists who shot as border police sought to arrest terror operatives in a pre-dawn raid. Local media reported that Fahd was killed by a unit of Mistarvim, undercover Israeli agents who disguised themselves as Palestinians to abduct or kill them. These agents have also been filmed infiltrating groups of Palestinians during protests, causing, chaos, and, of course, giving the Israeli media the backbone or the cover that it needs. Witnesses said the attacker left Fahd to bleed to his death, and, of course, tons of people actually ended up showing up for his funeral, which is quite incredible to see. Another crazy incident in East Jerusalem, where the police shot a 16-year-old Palestinian girl with a sponge-tip bullet while she stood in front of her home on the 18th of May. It's like as if the sponge tip makes it any better. It was incredibly captured on video. So this is as described by Khan News in Israel. So this is exclusive documentation. A policeman shot a sponge bullet in the back of a girl in the yard of her house in Sheikh Jarrah and mortally wounded her moderately after he granted his request to return home. So this is pretty much how the video sounds. And you can't really see it, but pretty much these, first you see a woman walk outside and this girl following behind her. Actually, it's a guy, but then he goes to kind of get the sister. There's clearly there are police outside, so they are they're kind of on alert and trying to, all crowding around the door, figuring out what's going on. So the mother first goes outside. And it's really what would be important, actually interesting to see is unclear, what the situation is. And then a man comes over, he goes outside, another man comes outside, and the boy is kind of standing out by the door. Very kind of a confusing situation. And so Janet Kiswani, this is actually Janet Kiswani and her father, had stepped out of the house to see what was happening in the street in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood when the girl was attacked as they were going back inside. So apparently there's some street commotion. And of course the girl suffered serious injuries when her father, Mohammed Kiswani, tried to assist her. Israeli police shot him in the leg, Tel Aviv Daily Haaretz reported. Occupation forces then fired a stun grenade that landed near the stricken girl and her father. The video documenting the shooting shows the police officer who fired at Jana violated almost every clause in the rule of engagement. So pretty impressive there. Really, I'd recommend you go watch that video. Really disgusting. Mohammed Kiswani said on Israeli radio he wanted to commit murder. Sounds about right to me. They went for the girl, then they went for the dad. Just had a tear gas canister in there. It's just really disgusting. No words to describe the kind of, evil and just demonic behavior that is on display here. Jana was taken to the hospital where she was found to have a spinal fracture and possibly kidney damage. According to arrests, she will require lengthy rehabilitation says the doctors have said. The officer has been suspended by Israeli Police Commission and is pending investigation. Human rights groups have long dismissed Israel's self-investigation system as a, quote, fig leaf for the occupation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that investigation in the Israeli Police Department. Human rights groups have kind of dismissed it, as we know, but Sheikh Jarrah is where, of course, Palestinians are resisting Israel's plans to forcibly dispel a number of Palestinian families to give their houses to Jewish settlers. Earlier this month, Israeli police installed checkpoints at the neighborhood entrances, preventing Palestinians who do not live there from entering while allowing in Jewish extremists. The situation just gets worse and worse and worse. So, finally, we do have this last story here of a child, an 11-year-old Palestinian boy detained last Monday by Israeli police while playing outside his home in Beit Hanina. And his sister, just probably so heartbreaking. One of the most heartbreaking videos that you've seen. His sister's coming out there like, what's wrong? And then his brother's just in the police car. And there's nothing they can do about it. Just absolutely horrific. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no other words to say it. All right. We're going to have to take a break, and we'll be back in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, and let me tell you about our lineup. Newsflash is all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays now, and that is, of course, our flagship show, but we have plenty of other great offerings for you, including Uncultured live mixes every Saturday. Perfect way to celebrate or get ready for the Saturday night. Have a good time. Tune in to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network for live broadcasts. And Hidden History is every Thursday now on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. We got a banger new episode coming for you around midday or so tomorrow. So you have that to look forward to. Please support us. Listen to our podcasts wherever. But when you do, please be sure to rate and review us, because that does help get the word out there. I'm sure you know the drill if you listen to podcasts. You know what to do. It's the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Thanks so much for listening. That episode about MLK is out now. Let's turn the page now to The Intercept, talking about in one of the wealthiest states in the country, Connecticut, a legislative fight is brewing over whether to tax elite residents who bring the state its superlative. Connecticut boasts the third. It's really kind of just a weird place in whole. Like, it's almost like there's two, maybe three different states in one state. So when a lot of people think of Connecticut, they think of course, the lower left-hand side, really, which is pretty much the rich part of the state. There you have like Stamford, Greenwich, Bridgeport, New Haven. Greenwich obviously one of the bigger parts of it, but New Haven, Westport, all the way up that line there, up until about it's kind of like the outer leg, which is like an insane proportion of the state's wealth, up to the northeast corner. My personal favorite part, the northwest corner. My personal favorite part is kind of like rural farmland, and honestly, I do not know too much about the western side, although I do know a lot of it's kind of a strong agricultural. Of course, you got Yukon over there in the eastern side of Connecticut, the right side of Connecticut, and the bottom right, you got all those kind of fishing towns, and the Norwalk Aquarium, pretty nice. Gotta say that. Shout out to Norwalk Aquarium. But anyway, yeah. So, and some good chill places to hang out before you get over to Rhode Island. But personally, I would say Greenwich, all that. Stay away from Greenwich. You definitely want to hang out over in the northeast corner. Much prettier, and doesn't make you feel kind of uncomfortable in a weird way. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's my Connecticut primer. But anyway, it's trifecta control for the Democratic Party, including a supermajority in the state Senate and a near supermajority in the House. In April, the State's Finance and Revenue Committee approved a package with tax cuts for the poor and middle-class residents, financed largely with new taxes on households earning $500,000 per year. But the General Assembly ends June 9th, and Connecticut's Governor Ned Lamont has declared he will veto any such move. So offsetting tax cuts for the poor, kind of been a big criticism that there is just super high taxes in Connecticut and people are leaving. But that's kind of from the business community. But plenty of people in the business community, trust me, are still there. Governor, just kind of the kind of northern and kind of eastern parts of Connecticut have been more deindustrialized. You kind of see the empty factories. They've kind of been a trend, obviously, as I'm sure you're well aware, in many other parts of the country. Governor Lamont has been clear for months. Connecticut doesn't need more taxes. We need more taxpayers, said a spokesperson, Max Rice, in a statement to The Intercept. Connecticut isn't just the nation's wealthiest state. It is also among the most unequal ones, with 1%, the top 1% out-earning the rest by more than 42-1. So maybe a little bit of redistributive wealth would actually make it more affordable and make it better for the people who already live there. Affluent towns like Darien and Greenwich stand in stark contrast to the realities of deeply poor cities like Hartford and Bridgeport. Of course, that's a lot of kind of post-industrial areas, and it's obviously where a lot of communities of color live. Lamont is a multimillionaire himself who grew his personal fortune through the telecommunications industry, and he lives in Greenwich. And if you like Greenwich, for example, and Litchfield County are in Stanford and Bridgeport. They are two different states completely. It's insane. I think sometimes people think they know more than they know, said Rodney Wade, a pastor for Waterbury, Connecticut, kind of definitely in the northwestern corner there. Big fan of Waterbury, Connecticut. He's been an advocate for cutting taxes or for tax increases, through a labor, faith, and grassroots coalition known as Recovery for All. And when you don't understand the language and the issues, and then you believe you have the answers, at the end of the day, it boils down to who has your ear. And what we've learned, it's been hard to get to the governor's ear compared to his buddies. So his Greenwich buddies, shall we say. Connecticut State Legislature isn't the only one in the Northeast to recently lean into a progressive revenue campaign, and advocates are hoping that their neighbors' wins will help them pass with leverage. Will help them with some leverage to help pass the bill. Last year, New Jersey became one of the first states to pass a millionaire's tax, increasing the income tax on millionaires by nearly 2 percentage points while creating a new annual rebate for families earning less than $150,000. Kind of this redistributive model being tried in states before it's tried nationwide. Always kind of a more risky proposal, but in the end, you can't really wait for someone like Joe Biden and the current Congress to do something like that. In New York, actually, my home state, it's been a bit of a different, a very similar story, actually, to Connecticut. This spring, New York lawmakers, though, succeeded in passing new legislation to tax the state's highest earners and corporations, something New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo had long resisted. But, there's one factor, couldn't quite put my finger on it, that may have changed his mind. So that's kind of what's going on in Connecticut. The budget fight, not really quite over yet, but we will keep an eye on it for you here on Newsflash. All right, let's move on to our final story, and this is a little bit of a fun one. Caitlin Schneider for this in Discourse blog. So pretty much what happened is she is from Huntington Beach, and she wrote a pretty good blog, gotta say, about accidentally stumbling on the famous TikTok party known as Adrian's Kickback. So hopefully this is explainable and understandable to all the older people listening who don't know what this is. But she writes, "We are gathered here to discuss the events that took place this Saturday, May 22nd, 2021 in Huntington Beach, California, in which 17-year-old Adrian Lopez posted a birthday party flyer on TikTok, which went viral, resulting in thousands of teenagers gathering, partying, rioting, and getting arrested. And she happened to be there along with her entire family." Here is some clips, some sound of the action.
All right, watch these fools. This whole thing started as a TikTok, and it's called a kick something or other. I don't know where. They all just went out of control.
And those are fireworks, so don't
fireworks
worry.
are just being launched from the middle of the crowd.
Yeah, so the scene here is pretty much just people swarming right by, like in the center of Huntington Beach. Absolute kind of chaos, people milling around, setting off fireworks and doing, jumping on things and God knows what. This is a picture, there's a picture of someone climbing on a tree, hanging out in parking garages, this guy scaling down and then jumping off into the crowd from a parking garage. And then, of course, the beach is where they really went crazy, setting off fireworks massively. In places that would not have been close to, satisfying health and safety people. Bunch of stage diving, and of course the stage being like a lifeguard stand at the beach. Someone doing donuts pretty poorly in the center of the beach. But anyway, in all likelihood, this kind of thing is bound to happen again. I think that's exactly right. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be people doing kickbacks until the whole world eventually ends. And people just end up, having so much fun and breaking the glass as like some sort of, post-pandemic release. And the whole world just burns down. Certainly possible. But this is how she describes it, kind of in a, like, as you would just see it. But this is actually how she ended up being in the middle of this Huntington Beach party. So at 8 p.m., you'll leave dinner at Duke's Huntington Beach. Awful acoustics, but better than expected for a tourist spot. With your spouse, parents-in-law, parents, in-laws, siblings, and siblings-in-law, with the intention of walking the iconic pier to show your parents, who have never been to Huntington Beach, a little bit more of what your spouse's hometown is like. At dinner, you'll have made your spouse tell the story of how at 10 years old he had to swim around the pier to prove his medal as a junior lifeguard and saw a human turd floating in the water. The table will have a mighty good laugh as the story is recounted, but there will be a palpable sense of disgust underneath the laughter. You know how that is. Soon, everyone's going to comment on how chilly it is. Someone will say on the pier seems busier than normal. Later, this will serve as a different kind of chilly, foreshadowing. A few minutes later, a roar will start to build up on one side of the pier. What's that? It's teens. They seem to be swirling like a typhoon around a central point. What are they doing? Let's run through the possibilities. Protesting? No signs. Dancing? No music. Do they seem happy? Mad? It's impossible to distinguish between the two. In any case, it seems calm enough, but again, why are there so many of them? Oh well, it's cold. Time to keep moving. 8:27 p.m. At the end of the pier, your brother-in-law will relay to you will relay to your sister-in-law, who will relay to your brother that it's, quote, Adrian's birthday. It's Adrian's birthday, he'll finally tell you. Who? Adrian. Who is Adrian? Not sure. A girl or a guy? Not sure. It has to do with viral TikTok, someone says. Like Adrian's a TikTok store or Adrian had a viral post. Everyone shrugs. It's Adrian's birthday, your mom will repeat. You watch a fisherman catch a stingray and then throw it back in the water. You watch a father, a fisherman himself, observe his hobby peers with excitement and fascination. This will please you. It's dark now, and you stare down at the black ocean water and watch it churn and think about what it'll be like to jump. Then you'll think about the turd again. You'll linger for a moment and then consider it. And the breeze will pick up. You'll be shaken from your reverie. Your spouse will say, shall we? And then you'll move on. At 8:35 p.m., you'll ask your brother and sister-in-law whether they experience the impulse to jump from high places or the imp of perverse. You'll talk about wanting to step in front of a bus, but won't fit the conversation because you'll notice that the crowd gathering at the end of the pier has gotten exponentially larger and much rowdier. A firework will explode. People will scream and shatter. Sirens will sound, and you'll watch several police cars move in. You'll expect chaos, but things will momentarily feel calmer. You'll look back and see your relatives filming at the edge of the pier, and you'll look over to see what they're documenting. A particularly dense area in the crowd will have amassed around someone holding a traffic cone up like the Stanley Cup. For a moment, you'll wonder... You'll think they're holding something of significance. That must be Adrian, you think, before realizing that it's just a traffic cone. 8:42 p.m., more fireworks, more sirens, more cop cars will descend at various locations. You watch teenagers stage dive from the pier and fall into the arms of strangers, and you'll remember COVID. You'll think about a potential for a super spreader event, especially in a place that's been a central hub for the anti-maskers. You'll push that from your mind as you see a young man climbing from a flagpole unassisted. You'll think, you'll wonder if it's weird if you find this invigorating. You look at your family and laugh and shrug, unable to process being around this many people, unable to begin to understand what you're experiencing, unable to tell whether you should be laughing or getting the hell out of there. More fireworks and screaming and teenagers moving en masse to document whatever is unfolding. You'll look to your spouse to get his assessment of what's happening in his hometown, and you'll be surprised at the lack of emotion on his face. Later he'll tell you he wasn't really surprised by any of it. Finally, your family and your cops, you and your family will decide it's time to leave around 8:55 p.m. You'll approach Duke's once again and see a line of cops protecting the entrance like a fortress, which will seem silly and dark. You'll watch them watch another firework go off without flinching. The Duke's employees will ask if it's okay if you fetch your car yourself. You'll tell them that's fine. As you pull out of the parking lot, you wait for people to shuffle by. One will stop to take a selfie. One will sprint by screaming, "Someone got stabbed!" You'll fail to find any record of this later, but you'll take an alternate route home. So that's kind of a fun story from someone who accidentally found themselves in the middle of something as crazy as Adrian's kickback. So anyway, that's all we got for you. TikTok parties will destroy the world. We all know it. Goodbye. We'll see you Monday.